This is what I made for a journal page swap that I'm in. I started out with an 8 by 10 piece of plain Bristol vellum, and then I just started grabbing papers and stuff from all over the art room that I thought would kind of go with the theme. Um, it's vintage sewing, so I had some dress patterns and some cardstock and buttons, and I have all kinds of sewing ephemera. So I just started pulling stuff out, looking at it, and trying to decide if it would work on the page or not, because I really didn't have an idea of what I was going to do. I had some fabric, I had some muslin, and then it was a white eyelet that I dyed with avocado skins, which turns everything pink, in case you didn't know. Um, so I'm just still trying to figure out what I'm going to use. These are some old button cards and that's some clip art that I found. And I knew I wanted to use the button cards in some way, but I wasn't sure how. I toyed with the idea of just covering the page with them, but decided against that. I had a little, that's a little needle envelope, and then some silk ribbons that I thought I might use. And I also had that baker's twine, which is not really old, but it looks kind of old-fashioned-y, so I thought it might work. And that is some seam binding that I wanted to use. And I also really wanted to use one of these zippers. I have a bunch of these old zippers, and that one I loved because the package was like all water damaged or something. So I knew I wanted to use that. And then this ended up being the bane of my existence. And it's just a satin ribbon that's printed kind of like a tape measure. And I knew I definitely wanted that on there, but the white just wasn't working. It wasn't saying vintage sewing. So I proceeded to try to age it a little bit. That, and then that piece of paper there is a label off of something, some seam binding or something. So I got some distress inks out and started trying to ink these things up so that they didn't look so white and brand new. And it went okay for a while, and like everything else, the longer I messed with it, the worse it got. So I used a couple of colors. I think I used antique linen and old paper on the ribbon, which looked good, but it was a little bit light. You know, it was very light and subtle and blendy. So I just kept adding and kept adding and kept adding, hoping that it would get to that old age look that I want. It wasn't really getting there. So I added a different color. I think that's the old paper. I started with the antique linen. So I added that old paper color because it's kind of got a greenish thing going on. And that was helping. I liked it a lot better when I added that, and especially on this piece of paper. And then I decided that stupid stipple brush was just really getting in my way, and I don't know why I even bothered with it. I never use brushes. Why was I using a brush? I don't know. So I just stuck my fingers in the ink, and that was much better. So I hit it all with the heat gun to dry it, and when I did, the ribbon was just very subtle, way too subtle. I liked the paper. The paper turned out good. I was happy with that. Not so much happy with the ribbon, though. So I thought maybe if I just get an ink pad. I had 2 ink pads that I thought were almost out of ink, and I thought, okay, I'll just kind of rub it around on those. They're Fresco chalk pads. Yeah, they weren't quite as out of ink as I thought they were. And look at me being like a big girl and everything. I remembered to put a glove on before I did that. I was so impressed with myself. So anyway, I smushed the ribbon down on these chalk pads because it really needed deeper color than what I was getting with those re-inkers. Smushed it around and decided, okay, that was a little better, but it still wasn't quite right. If you're thinking that the ribbon looks purple right now, it's because it's purple at this point. What happened was I wasn't really happy with the fresco ink that I put on there, so I took it downstairs and put some bleach on it, and it turned everything purple. And it was a little too shiny, so I took those scissors and just kind of distressed it to take the shiny off with the scissors, which worked fine, but the bleaching it, not so much. I decided that where I went wrong is after I bleached it, I added more ink, and that's when it turned purple, so there was still bleach on it. So that was just a little cup of water I had some glue in it or something. And I decided to rinse off the ribbon, to rinse out the bleach, which also rinsed out the extra ink that I put on there. So we were getting back to white, and I was starting to lose the printed part of the ribbon, so I was really thinking this was going to be a disaster, but I had that whole big roll of it, so if it didn't turn out, it's all right. I'll just cut another piece and start over. But I wanted to try to make this one work. So I went about the process of adding some more of those same inks I used before, now that I had the bleach all rinsed out of it, and was hoping that that would work better this time. So yeah, forget that stupid stipple brush. Let's just do it the Shannon way and mush it all around. Added some water just to make it all blendy. And this was getting better. It still wasn't quite the color that I wanted. So I got some different colors of Distress inks. I wasn't sure about this one. I can't remember which one this was. That might have been the tea dye, but it was too brown. So I got that other one, which was maybe that vintage photo, and that one was better. That was the color that I wanted. It wasn't quite such a reddish brown. I needed more of a, I don't know, grayish brown. So I used that. Was feeling better about that. It was getting to where I wanted it, but still not quite there. Whoops, sorry. Yep, we know what that is. So I dried it off, and it lightens up quite a bit after you get it all dry. And it was okay, but I decided it needs what everything else needs, and that's a little bit of yellow ochre. I don't know what it is, but yellow ochre just makes everything better. So I just used a dye-based re-inker. And before I did that, I had to get rid of the all those distress inks that I had on my plate, so I just used that dress pattern to soak it all up. And then I figured I could use those later. They ended up actually looking kind of cool. I never did use them, but I've still got them, and they'll end up in something eventually. So I cleaned off my plate and then put the yellow ochre dye re-inker on there and added some water, and then decided to try the stipple brush again, determined to make it work. And this was looking much better. This was the color that I wanted. It was warm, but not too much of the reddish that I was getting with that other brown. So it was better, but not great. And I put a little, see those white spaces? I touched it with a little bleach to see what would happen. And it was just, I was not happy with it. So I bleached it again. I know. Just start over, Shannon. Why didn't you just start over? Well, because then that means the ribbon would win, and it couldn't win. I had to win. So bleached it, rinsed it, went back in with the yellow ochre because I decided that's probably just what I should have used in the first place. So put some more of that back in, and I was liking that much better. It was getting to where I needed it to be, but it needed some more of those other re-inker colors because I did like those. So put some more of the Distress re-inkers back in. And, even on Speedy Video, I know it's taken forever to just distress this one stinking piece of ribbon. So can you imagine how long it took in real life? I'm not kidding. I probably spent 45 minutes on this little piece of ribbon just trying to turn it brown. I went a little overboard, but I wanted it right. So anyway, it did eventually get there. Um, this is just more of that. I think that's that old aged paper, whatever, distress ink. And it finally got where I needed it. There we go. So next, I don't remember what I did next. Oh yes, this is me trying to lay out the design, and I just took all the papers that I had pulled out and started trying to arrange them on the sheet to see if I could come up with something that I liked. I cut that out of one of the pieces of paper that I had and decided it would probably make a good focal point because I really didn't have another focal point. So I started, this is me just continuing to mess with the backgrounds and all the little textured papers and things. And I decided that those just weren't working. There was too much color and the white background, I didn't like those. So ditched those, but I definitely wanted that one because I love the way it turned out. And then I knew I had a couple of zippers, and I toyed with the idea of making that little insert thing like a tag that you pull out of that zipper container. But I wasn't quite sure. I had another one that had an actual zipper in it, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that zipper thing was going to end up there somehow. So I just arranged the papers till I got them kind of like I wanted them. And this is just the background part, you know, and I did lay out like the foreground or the excuse me, the embellishments like I thought I'd want them, but I didn't glue anything down at this point. I'm still just kind of arranging and rearranging and deciding what to use and what not to use and what works and what doesn't. And I'm liking everything at this point except that piece of paper on the right with the girl on it. Yeah, she was throwing the whole thing off because she's more of a focal point and she was kind of fighting with the sewing machine. So I ditched her and got another piece of scrapbook paper, and that was okay. I didn't like the placement. I didn't like the line going down the middle. See right there where the sewing machine was? So I just moved the papers around a little bit until I got it like I wanted and decided that that would be kind of the focal part of the page in the bottom right corner. So finally ended up getting it about like I wanted it to be. Decided not to use the dress pattern, but by gosh, I was going to use that stinking ribbon that I'd spent an hour on. So I decided to put it across the bottom, kind of a border. And since this is a whole vintage sewing theme, I knew I needed some fabric. So I cut a piece of that's that avocado dyed eyelet fabric, and stuck it right there. And then, you know, you just can't think vintage sewing and not have a piece of muslin. So I got a scrap of muslin and used it on there. Oh, that's me trying to decide if I need those, and I decided that I didn't. So I cut the muslin. I didn't really cut it. I snipped it and then tore it because I wanted those torn edges. And got it down to the size I wanted. Figured out where to put it. And I was pretty happy with it. At this point, I thought, okay, this is good. It needs some tweaking, but it's good. So before I glued anything down, I do what I always do. I took a picture of it. Because, you know, you have to move stuff off of there to glue it down and all that. And I didn't want to forget where I put it. So I glued down just the background pieces, not the embellishments. And I didn't glue them completely down, just, you know, in the middle of them, and just lightly glued them. Took it over to the sewing machine because I knew I wanted to have some sewing on it because, you know, it goes with the theme. So I just did some random sewing. I went along and, you know, went around the edge of some of the pieces to make sure they were stuck down good, and then just did that random free range sewing, you know, did circles and whatever. And I had just a tan colored fabric and used a zigzag stitch. So did that, and I was happy with that because it added a lot of texture and filled in some of the blank areas on the background. So that worked out good. So there's my background, all done. Took it back over and see all the sewing on the back. Cool, huh? Taylor's home, and I'm going to say out loud that I'm recording, so don't speak. She's making faces at me. Okay, so now I'm starting to fiddle with the foreground pieces and deciding how I want those laid out. And I'm looking at the picture on my camera to see how I had it and kind of putting it back sort of in the same way. But that little piece right there, that little needle envelope, that gave me all kinds of trouble. It just wasn't making me happy everywhere I put it. But I just kept fiddling with it all. And then I decided that button card needed buttons. An empty button card is stupid. So I sewed some buttons on it. And then I got a piece of thread out to thread the sewing machine because, you know, it'd be stupid to have a sewing machine there with no thread in it. So I just got a piece of gray thread and glued it down so that it looked like the sewing machine was threaded. You really can't see it at all in the video, but it looks kind of cool in real life. And it was a little tedious to get it done. And I cut out most of the process because all you could see is the back of my head. I filmed quite a bit of the back of my head while trying to do that. Now I'm gluing down some little straight edges, making sure everything's glued down good, and figuring out what to do about that zipper, or the zipper envelope, the zipper holder. What is that? The zipper pouch? Package, zipper package, there's the word. I had two, and fiddled with them both and decided I liked the bluer one better. This stressed me out a lot because the other package had a yellow zipper in it. The blue package that I wanted to use had a light pink zipper in it, but I didn't have a light pink zipper. So I went to the zipper box and started looking for a light pink zipper because it's printed there on the package. It says light pink. So, it felt stupid putting that yellow zipper in there. It had to have a light pink zipper. So I found a light pink zipper, put it in there, hated it because it was right up against the pink piece of fabric. So decided I just had to get over the fact that it said light pink on the package and just put in, a zipper that I liked. So I found a darker pink, I found a shorter yellow because the other yellow zipper I had from the other package was like 20 inches long or something. It was crazy. And that light blue I really thought was going to work because it was sort of a baby blue. And, the page is really kind of muted and pastel tones. So I was thinking that was going to work, but tested them all out, put the yellow in, decided it was okay. But I really felt like the baby blue was going to be the better one. So I took it out, and oh yeah, that was stupid. Yeah, I decided do not unzip it like that because the two little ends sticking out look ridiculous. So I took the baby blue out of the package and tried it and really thought that was going to be the one to use, and it wasn't. It was too much of a greenish blue, and I didn't like it. And went back to the yellow and decided that was the one. So put it in the package and stared at it for a little while, messed with it, wondered, okay, do I need to shove the whole thing in or do I need to leave the end of it sticking out? What do I need to do? I decided that leaving the end sticking out was the way to go, and the yellow was definitely the way to go. So, decision made. Let's see, then I remembered that I had some snaps somewhere. So I got out my it was in my box of elastic. And look at me putting all my zippers away so good. Gosh, I was so mature in this video. So I found my snaps and started going through there, and look what I found. I found that garter hook thing, and that was just exciting. Found the snaps and hooks and stuff that I was looking for, and then I just kind of messed with them and put them in different places to see if I'd want to use them. And yeah, spent an unusually long amount of time proofing with those, and finally decided on that one. And I did decide that I wanted the garter hook as well. And really kind of where I just laid it down when I first pulled it out of the box is where it needed to be. So went with it. I wanted a piece of lace hanging from the garter hook. So I went to my little scrap jar and pulled out some scraps of lace and started trying them in the hook. And this first one I didn't like. It was too big and it was too shiny. And then I hooked up about 6 or 7 more pieces before finally finding one that I settled on. And I just ripped a piece of lace off of there and stuck it in there and ended up with one that I liked. I ended up I used an old sewing machine needle to hold the garter hook in place, and then I put some pins here and there and was liking that. And then it was time to deal with the zipper and get it on there. And I had cut off the zipper and then glued it to the front of the package, but I wanted to cut off those flaps on the back because they made the package too bulky, and it stood up off the page too much. So that was just excess paper that I didn't need, so I cut those off, and yeah, I saved them. And just glued those little edges down, and then glued the zipper onto the page, which ended up working really well. I liked the way it turned out. I liked the yellow. I didn't think that I would, but it was just the right thing. It didn't blend in so bad that it got lost, but it didn't stick out too much that it looked like it didn't belong. It was just right. So now I'm committed because I'm using that Beacon 3-in-1 glue that's just really, really sticky. I love that glue. It's really good glue for everything, really. So stuck it down. Committed now. And decided that that looked good. I liked it. I was happy with it. I proofed it. And I thought I probably ought to put some glue around that that hook right there to hold the lace in, because I didn't want it coming out. So I just put some of that glue around the thingy and put the lace back in so that it wouldn't ever, pull out. It was secure. So there we go. Now everything was stuck down except for those pins, and I just kind of stuck them under that sewing machine image, so I pried the edge up a little bit more so that I could get some glue down there and glue them in good so that they wouldn't pull out. And the last thing I did was I used a black gelato and went around the edge of the page and around some of the little pieces just to add some definition, and of course finish the back because it's not done until the back's done. And there we have it.